We don't know. They could, I think even right now, begin to do that. But they have not. I think they try to work with us first. I think part of the reason for that is it's in our plan, and we're showing them a plan that we're compliant. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. When were these plans developed?
Do you recall?
They were developed about 5 years ago, some of the plans.
So back in
And they're updated every year as well, so we go
Right.
through and update them.
But the original plans were developed back during the boom. And so those plans were developed were based on the economy, at the scale of the economy at the time. Is that correct?
Originally, but they've been adjusted for growth and some of the capital facilities in this model have been adjusted.
Now,
as
the
well.
other thing I'm having a hard time with as well is, we can't be the only city that's dealing with this. We cannot be a lone story. And the other thing is, if we are a lone story, why are we a lone story? And why are we so far ahead of how much Camas is charging? Have they already done everything that needed to be done earlier? I mean, it just seems to be a huge disparity. And so, and I know we're not exactly the same size, and we don't have the same staffing, and the needs are a little different, but it just seems like there's just, some reason ours just seem really out of whack compared to.
I can speak to that,
Yeah.
John. I think first and foremost, these plans weren't developed based upon the level of activity in the economic engine. They're developed on population estimates that are mandated by the state down to the counties. Now, would those population estimates have been lower 5 years ago if the economy was 2-3 years mired in the Great Recession? That's possible. I'm not sure. I know that at the time that that plan was being updated, we're given a range. There's a low end and a high end of population. And so there was advocacy, strong advocacy in the community that all of our communities needed to plan for the high end. That was the growth advocacy position. And of course there was the slow growth advocacy position was you should take that lower one. I think the county, based on nothing specifically magic, picked a number kind of in the middle and said, we're gonna plan for that level of growth, and it still was challenged. So it wasn't a function per se of economic indicators, unless they were population growth estimates was a surrogate for that, then potentially. We're going to talk about comparisons in a little while in the presentation. Just as a preview, I think what you'll find is actually our rates are lower than all of the other communities in the area, and that our rates, as proposed in 11, will be lower than all but one community in the area. However, our rate increases that are being proposed now, particularly in sewer, are higher than almost everyone else. I think there was 1 or 2 ones that were within a point of ours or here or there, depending on the details. I can't speak to the past, only to say that this is the first time that Washougal has looked at the issue of system reinvestment. It's the first time it's looked at trying to have sewer pay for itself. And I'll probably just leave it at that. I just think that this is a sharper pencil maybe being applied to the utilities with respect to what it would take to maintain their integrity. So it's trying to take it to a level where maybe some others are at already, and have maybe made some difficult decisions in the past with respect to rates. So that's some of the driver. Some of the consequences, we can't tell you specifically what will happen, but there are fines and penalties that can happen under the WAC and under the RCW. We have it up there, it's the M word, we call it the M word, growth moratorium. It is a tool, a regulatory tool that both DOH and DOE have. You've heard of that happening in the county and in other counties in the area over the last decade. They simply didn't have capacity in their water systems for anyone else to connect, and they simply did not have any capacity in their wastewater systems for anyone else to connect. and they stopped development, the complete moratorium. There are limits on how long that can go, and part of the compliance is what's your plan to get out of moratorium. And so you end up having to do the projects anyway, because you gotta get out of moratorium. I don't know that DOH and DOE have approached us with the M word specifically. I just say that to tell you that it is a tool in the regulatory toolkit. And in a couple of instances, we are on the graces of those agencies because we've already been working with them, and Jim is nodding. We've already deferred, they've kind of acquiesced to that deferment on a couple of the things, particularly the expansion of the wastewater plant for redundancy.
Dave, is the moratorium an all or nothing? Is that residential and commercial, or can you parse it out and say zero residential and commercial can continue?
It depends. It would depend. I'm not aware of a partial. If there simply isn't any more capacity, I think it's blanket moratorium.
But I think Battleground did that when their moratorium came out for their sewer. It was done.
For
There
3
wasn't,
years, yeah.
there was no distinguishing one or the other.
Right. The only moratorium that I have specific personal experience with was around transportation capacity, and it was in East Vancouver because of Mill Plain and the 205 and Chocoloff right there. You've probably heard it's been publicized quite a bit, 205, I-5, Salmon Creek, moratorium there, very difficult. You can't afford to pay for the transportation improvements, and then everything closes down, and all the types of things that could help you begin to start doing that, you can't do, so you chase your tail in this moratorium. It sort of feels similar in this case. I want to be clear that I'm not saying that we are going to be in moratorium if you don't pass the rates. I just want you to be aware that it is a regulatory tool, and if we aren't attentive to our facilities plans, it's a possibility that we would face. The other last couple of legal and financial considerations, one is with respect to your general fund budget. As you know, we assess taxes on utility bills, our own utilities as well as the franchise utilities, and that revenue goes into the general fund. For this year, the difference in revenue to the general fund as a function of the proposed rate increases is about $75,000. So just, that's how much revenue is going into the general fund from these increases. Future costs, we listed here. If you defer construction now, the future cost to do that construction will be higher for any number of reasons, one of which is it's good to do them now, although not all the projects are now, they're in the whole 5-year window. Just a variety of reasons why those costs go up. So that's an implication of deferral. And then last is that particularly under the surface water requirements with the DOE, under the federal guidelines, there are, and under the Endangered Species Act, communities that aren't in compliance with their stormwater permit or are perceived to not have adequacy in their stormwater permit, even if you have a permit, but there's perceived inadequacy in that. There are third-party lawsuits that are available to third parties. And you may be aware of some communities in our region that have incurred expense defending against third-party lawsuits, even when they felt that